World of Warcraft Midnight is here, and after streaming it and beating the leveling campaign, I think it's time for first impressions. In today's video, I'll answer some key questions. Does this expansion hold up? How is the story? How is the leveling? What are the pros? What are the cons? Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls, and it truly is midnight. Let's start with talking about what the expansion got right. The biggest thing, far and away, the visuals. Midnight is absolutely gorgeous. And while visuals aren't everything, for an RPG that's trying to get you immersed into the experience, I think having a captivating world and great art direction goes a very long way. And I think Midnight largely nails this. I'm not a fan of how they try to rein in the Blood Elven aesthetic from being Blood Elven and try to be more High Elven, but Eversong is absolutely gorgeous, man. I love what they did with the runestones and the trees and the foliage and all that. I don't like them making the Silvermoon God outfits more simple, especially when you compare them to like the TBC Silvermoon gods. But like Zul'aman, Voidstorm, Harandar, man, these zones are varied aesthetically but gorgeous all the same and reminiscent of the visual aesthetics we had back in TBC. The art team absolutely nailed it, man. They nailed it. And I love having the Voidstorm and Sunwell Beam being a giant visual that is there throughout like all of Eversong and also Zul'aman. It's so dang good. The game is absolutely gorgeous and visuals aren't everything, but there's a few other key things that I think they did very well. One of those being Zul'aman. Zul'aman was such a treat. Now, the actual plot beats they hit there and the story that is told in the A plot, very tropey, very by the numbers, nothing really special there. It's handled decently well to where the characters are somewhat likable and the things that are going on are interesting enough, particularly if you enjoy troll lore and troll stuff in Warcraft. It's basically an absolute feast of troll stuff. The aesthetics are great. The lore for the Amani, in my opinion, is rather interesting. I like how they give personality to the different forest troll tribes. I think Zul'jara and Zul'jan are probably two of the best characters in the expansion, though I'm very concerned about where they're going to go from here with these characters, because tell me if you've heard this one before. So you have Zul'jara. She's the leader of the Amani, and you have her brother, her right-hand man, Zul'jan. Now, while Zul'jara loves the thrill of combat and all that, and that, in my opinion, does make her a better character, she's a bit more strategic, a bit more cautious, compared to a far more aggressive brother who is willing to allow sacrifices to be made in order to get the job done. He's more hard-headed, and at this point, do you see what's going to happen? Yes, his hard-headedness, his aggressiveness does get people killed. It becomes a problem. And at the end of it all, when he's kind of proven to be wrong, he's a bit mopey about it. Like I said, the A plot in this zone and Midnight overall vary by the numbers. It's very generic, and you feel as if you've seen this story a million times before. It's just in Zul'aman itself, it's carried by all the cool troll stuff, the cool Amani stuff, and that while these characters are rather stereotypical, they're still somewhat likable. One of the things I really appreciated in Zul'aman, and also when we get to the Voidstorm, is how these characters genuinely feel as if they care about each other and love each other. It's like with Zul'jara and Zul'jan being the siblings of the pair, and also like their elder Kindaru. There's a bunch of like interesting characters in Zul'aman with varied personalities. Overall, you can kind of predict what's going to happen. It's a troll zone. Guess what? We're gonna go around the zone gathering up all the Loa for the big final battle of the zone where we all come together with the Loa. Yeah, it's basically just Nazmir again in that regard. It's just handled well. There's a reason Zul'aman is a bit of a fan favorite. For me, though, there is another zone in Midnight that, for me, is right up there with Zul'aman, and that is the final zone, Voidstorm. This zone was an absolute delight. If I could make any comparison between the Voidstorm and anything else, imagine the coolest 80s power metal album cover you could think of. That is the Voidstorm. Visually, it's captivating with just how grandiose and cool it is. Their use of color, their use of lighting, and their sense of scale here. Now, are the Void essentially just conceptually ripped from the void of Final Fantasy XIV? Basically, yes. If you've done the Endwalker patches for Final Fantasy XIV, you kind of know the story and the vibe of the void here. That doesn't make it a bad thing, though. The characters that are there in the Voidstorm are rather likable, and I'm going to get into why I am not a fan of the dynamic between Arator and Turalian, his father, later in the video when we get to the cons. But I want to take a minute to talk about Arator and Illyria here in the Void Storm. They're nice. It's one of the things I think is the highlight of the writing in Midnight. Blizzard are getting so much better at writing characters that genuinely like each other, not in a romantic sense, but in like a familial sense. Arator and Illyria feel like mother and son. They care about each other. Their dialogue feels very genuine, and I do think that goes a far distance to making these characters likable. Overall, I'm still not a fan of Arator as a character, but what they did in the Void Storm with Illyria, far more up my alley compared to what they're doing with Arator and Turalyon. There was also a murder mystery plot back in Eversong that I thought was really neat. Not the most complicated storyline of all time, but I thought it was fun. But there was an element to the mechanics of leveling here that I really appreciated, and that was their active attempt to integrate dungeons and delves into the main story and to tell stories throughout these experiences. I think when it comes to like World of Warcraft questing and the way that WoW conveys a story, it can get rather repetitive, either a cutscene or quest text. What I liked here was how the plot in a lot of these zones was furthered or explained in interesting ways by using delves and dungeons. The delves to a lesser degree, but the dungeon they use in the Zul'aman main story and also the dungeon they use, or both dungeons for Void Storm, do a great job. More so with the first dungeon of Void Storm, which leads us going to the zone to begin with. The way they're able to convey story inside the dungeons to me makes the experience so much stronger. They're not overused or anything, but when they are used, they're used rather well. On top of that, genuinely the side quests in this expansion are pretty dang good so far. I haven't done too many of them, but I've done like 4 quest lines in total. All 4 have been excellent. There was one in Midnight that unlocked an entire dungeon, which I really liked, and had a whole story with the Spider Lower and the Raven Tusk and the Witherbark, and it's really interesting and compelling. In Eversong, there was a quest line that I did between a Farstrider and a Magister, trying to find a lost journal and just arguing and bickering with each other, and we had to use both of their techniques in order to find the journal. Nothing too serious, nothing too over the top. It was a little bit of comedic relief, and it was fun. It was short and sweet. And there's another quest line that I did in the Midnight Beta that I did again here, and I still love it. And it's this entire quest line. You pair up with this like Blood Elven detective that's like over the top and wacky, and you uncover this smuggling ring involving like Naga, and it's really dang cool and it's fun, and like it's the perfect little like escapade to get up to for a side quest. It's just fun. And I think this is where like Blizzard's storytelling and overall narrative is at its best. It's in the side quest, not the A plot. I have a lot of issues with the main story of Midnight, but those issues just really aren't present in the side quest because they're able to be self-contained and don't have to rely on whether or not Blizzard actually understands the history of World of Warcraft. They're just fun little self-contained narratives that expand on the world. And there's another question that I did in Zul'aman involving this kid troll like trying to talk to the Loa of children in order to see her dead sister again. It was rather heartwarming. Was it anything like over the top and spectacular? No, but it doesn't need to be when it's a side quest. It's far more focused and it executes on a singular idea very well. And now we have to get into the issues. Buckle up. There's a lot. When I came back to the game with The War Within, I was far more forgiving with the narrative because I understood that the story for The War Within had been planned out for a while, and they decided to break it up into 3 parts for the World Soul Saga. And they also brought in some new writers, particularly Chris Metzen. And you know what? I was willing to go say, hey, I get some things are already set in stone. You can't just turn this ship overnight. I get that. If things are a little bit slow or they're not like perfectly executed for a little bit, I'm willing to have some patience and hear you out. We are in Midnight now. There are no excuses. The pacing is abhorrent. I still cannot care about the characters of Arator and Turalyon. Outside of Arator interacting with Illyria, that bit I like. The whole daddy issues we're having again with Arator and Turalyon, I simply don't care about. We've been here, done that with Varian and Anduin. It was there, but it was more compelling there. We're just doing that again. And I can't unsee that comparison where it's like the story of Anduin and Varian was like father and son operating on different ends of the spectrum for how they approached the world and various problems. Varian was far more aggressive, Anduin was far more passive and like dangerously empathetic. And their whole narrative was that they had to learn to meet in the middle. Varian had to cool off, Anduin had to learn, hey, sometimes you gotta fight. I thought that was compelling and interesting. We're just doing that again with Arator and Turalyon, but we're just adding the light is a factor on top of all of that. I simply don't care about another character with daddy issues. Been there, done that, I got the t-shirt. I've seen that story a million times before. Doing it 1,000,001 times doesn't make it unique or interesting to me. I want to revert to something I casually mentioned before in this section, but didn't really elaborate on. The pacing. It's awful. In the middle bit. When you start Midnight, you will do the Sunwell introduction area, where Xal'atath and the Devouring Host are invading the Sunwell. You fight them off. Really great introductory scenario. Probably one of their best. It's right up there with me with the Warlords of Draenor introductory experience. It's not as good as that one, but it's rather dang close in my opinion. Then after that, you do the Eversong storyline. It's okay. I like it. I think it's above average. Then they give you a choice. You can go do the Arator campaign. You can go do Zul'aman, or you can go do the Home of the Harinir Harandar. This is the issue that I have, because after all of that, you then do Voidstorm. Voidstorm is great. It's right up there with Zul'aman for me. Love it. This middle bit, oh my god. I thought we got away from this. I was hoping beyond hope we got away from this, because the problem with doing a split decision zone order for leveling is that it makes these split choices feel like filler arcs, even if they're not supposed to be, because the story's not flowing from one into the next plot beat into the next. You have to go to this other area, experience a self-contained story, and because you can do them in any order, they can't really relate to one another. So it's like you're doing 3 anime filler arcs before you can get back to the main plot with Voidstorm. And Voidstorm's great. And I'm not even saying that the things you do in the Arator campaign or in Zul'aman or in Harandar aren't important, or that they aren't brought up again in the future. They are, particularly with the Arator questline. But while I'm doing that, it feels like I'm watching Bleach and I got to the Bount arc. This is a problem WoW leveling has had for the longest time, where it like starts you off with the A plot, then you have to go do all the other zones and deal with their specific issues before at the very end we can finally address the A plot again. And it's like, just do the A plot, dude. Have the story go from one zone into the next seamlessly and tell a coherent singular story. But you don't do that. It can work on very special occasions, but overall, I am so tired of this formula. Zul'aman's great. I hate the Arator quest, and I hate Harandar. Everything involving the Harinir is trash. I hate their lore. I hate their characters. They're just nothing burgers. I think they do more harm by their addition into Warcraft. I wish all the attention and focus the Harinir got was just distributed elsewhere to establish stuff that's already in World of Warcraft. I couldn't care less about the Light Bloom. Remember the plant stuff from like Warlords of Draenor? Bring that stuff back essentially, but add a light bulb. And that's basically what the Light Bloom feel like. They feel as if they were included in Midnight just to give the Harinir something to do, because I guess they forgot about the Black Blood from the War Within. Let's talk about the Arator quest line. Okay, so the premise is there's a bunch of light aspected characters like Velen and a bunch of others that are maintaining the Sunwell as it's shooting a giant beam of light up to the Voidstorm to keep Xal'atath and the Devouring Host at bay. Okay, cool. They're running low on energy because, you know, time is passing, and that's kind of tiring work. Okay, and Arator's being mopey because, well, Turalyon, in a bit of light blindness, when it was going to go and kill Zul'jan, Arator jumped in front of it and took a slash from Turalyon's sword right across the torso, and now he has to have his emo arc about what it means to be a paladin and whether or not he actually likes the light. And if this was just like a minor patch in the patch cycle and you insert this story there, it would be okay. It would be perfectly serviceable. But going back to the pacing issue, I care about the A plot. I care about the Voidstorm and Xal'atath Devouring Host and dealing with that. What I don't care about is acting like I'm some kind of bartender going around gathering holy artifacts so that these characters trying to like keep the sunbeam up are able to keep doing their job. All the while we have to deal with like Arator and his daddy issues. I don't care, dude. It's like at least they attach Alonza's Foul here, and Alonza's Foul is cool. I like him. And I like how they incorporate like an undead holy priest into the storyline, where it's like him using the light basically hurts and burns him, and he can't actually go into the Sunwell proper because he would basically just combust. I like how they include little details like that, and then have to explain away how an undead player character could do that as well. It's like, and like the mechanics of the Arator questline is something that I like, and I hope they do again in the future. I like the fact that we spend some time in the main campaign to go back to older zones and dealing with those locations and those parts of the world. I like that. I just don't like the things that we do here in the Arator questline. And then we continue after that, helping Alonzo's Fel trying to get through to Arator. And it's just like, brother, do we have nothing else better to do? Imminent invasion by the Void to one of the greatest fonts of power in all of Azeroth. Why am I helping this 40-year-old dude who has daddy issues? This isn't Reddit, bro. What are we doing? Again, if this was a minor quest line in a minor patch, it would be okay. But you just slap it in the main campaign and it breaks the pacing. On top of that, Midnight has one massive crippling flaw to me, and it's one that I can't get past. The Midnight story gets worse the more you think of it. What do I mean by this? Well, the premise of the expansion is that the light brings in the army of the light, Turalian, Lothraxian, to help defend Silvermoon and defend the Sunwell from the devouring host. Okay, and throughout the main campaign, you have little interlude quests detailing the struggles between the people of Silvermoon, the Void Elves, and Lorthamar with the army of the light, and having this outside power basically have to come in and start to take charge of Silvermoon and the tensions that arise as a result of that. Sounds okay, right? Like that sounds kind of compelling. Where's the Horde? Are they over there? Are they over here? Are they over there? Are they on that wall? Where are they? Where's the Horde? Where's Thrall? Where's Rokon? Where's Bane? Thalisra is up in a building just chilling, doing nothing the entire storyline, I might add. Why is the entire Horde leaving Lorthamar out to dry to fend for himself against the Magisters of Silvermoon and also the Army of the Light and Turalian? What are we doing? He quips back every now and then, sure, but why is Thrall not coming in to back his boy? What's going on here? This is a major crippling flaw with modern Blizzard writing. They have a story they want to tell, and they tell it like a sledgehammer. They have no subtlety or care for what came before or the natural state of the world. They're going to explain away any obvious thing that should happen in the most haphazard way that's not believable or realistic. There's an entire part of this storyline, by the way, that doesn't happen in the A plot, but it's told through like the visuals of what's going on in Silvermoon. We have people fleeing Silvermoon through the portal system in Silvermoon. Are you telling me we can't bring in some key players of the Horde to help back up Lorthamar or give him some extra fighting power? There's like maybe one orc, like maybe one. There might be two. There's like one Tauren paladin, and the rest of the Sunwalkers, including Desco, I'm not joking, are building a fence in the Arathi Highlands, because that's part of the Arator questline. Don't worry, guys. I found some Horde. They're over in the Void Storm in the PvP zone. Yeah, freaking monkey's paw situation when it comes to wanting more faction tension. We get it, but it makes the narrative even dumber. Blizzard has a story they want to tell. They don't care about anything else in the world. They don't care about the history. They don't care about anything else. They're going to tell the story they want to tell no matter what, even if it doesn't make sense or if it doesn't fit, or if something else would be far more likely given the context of the world and the various systems at play. It's not like the entire storyline of Midnight happens over the course of 4 minutes. I get that the Army of the Light were basically teleported in, but we have portals open. It's like the Horde have some of the most robust portal technology in all of Azeroth because of the Blood Elves and the Nightborn. You're telling me Thrall can't leave his like flock of griffins in Khazal-Gar to come over here and deal with this? It's lazy, bad writing, and it's unrealistic, and it's writing where the more you think on it, the more it falls apart and crumbles. It feels like a story they wanted to tell in a different game, couldn't do it there, and just decided to tell it here. And they don't care if it actually works or flows with the rest of the world, they're just going to tell it regardless. Why is it that when we go to Zul'aman, we are just taking Lady Liadrin? That's fine. Where's Rokon? Where's like insert any representative of the Zandalari? Wouldn't that be cool for the Horde to have like the Darkspear and the Zandalari have a presence in the story of Zul'aman and like the clashing of those troll cultures? Couldn't that be really cool? It could, but they're not going to do that because they just want to have this storyline of Zul'jara and Liadrin being from peoples that that hate each other, but they form a friendship because they have a story they want to tell and they don't care about the world, the history, or the characters, or the actual logic of this world. They are simply going to tell the story they want to tell and ignore everything else to do so. There are so many missed opportunities in Midnight, dude. We finally have a storyline that is extremely, or at least supposed to be, Blood Elven centric. The three main characters of this plot: Arator, Illyria, Turalyon. Liadrin a bit for like Zul'aman, but we don't even get much in the way of like character development for her there. It's just her like yapping about her own character development she had back in TBC to Zul'jara, which is like, okay, but it's easily the worst bit of the zone to me. And then with Lor'themar, with a little bit of him in the introductory scene, and then for the entire A-plot, the dude's just camping out in the Sanctum of Light in Silvermoon, being like, hey, champion, there's some crap over here, go do it for me. And then after every zone, you go report back to him and like, wow, man, yeah, like, pretty screwy situation, don't you think? Well, champion, got another zone for you. Because they want to tell the story of Arator, Illyria, and Turalyon, and they don't care about anything else because they want to tell their specific storyline that they want to tell. This story gets worse the more you think on it. The story ages like milk. There are some elements that are genuinely good. I love the characterization that we get with Arator in the Voidstorm with Illyria. I think it's sweet. I think it's wholesome. Anything to do with Turalyon in this expansion, I just like dry heave. And it goes back to a video that I made a little while ago. Blizzard struggles with writing dudes. Zul'jahn is somewhat likable. I can see his future story a mile away. I don't care about Arator, and I hope to God they don't do a Lothraxian with Turalyon. I don't think they're going to. I think they're gonna get like right to the brink with it before they like bring him back and like redeem him. And some of the things that they do in the story are absolutely categorically stupid. Now, I like the story that is told in the dungeon Magistus Terrace. It's the dungeon that leads you into the Voidstorm zone. And the premise is Lor'themar agrees with like Umbric that in order to get to the Voidstorm, where Xal'atath is, Umbric needs to get closer to the Sunwell in order to do some stuff. But the Magisters don't want Umbric anywhere near there because it could flip the Sunwell from light to void. So you do the dungeon, and the first half involves you killing a bunch of Blood Elves that are trying to prevent you from getting to where you need to be. Rather, I'm playing a Blood Elf hunter. In what universe does it make sense for the Regent Lord of the Blood Elves to have another Blood Elf side with an Alliance guy to go into the Sunwell and kill other Blood Elves? Brother, I'm playing a survival hunter. I don't want to hear that I'm knocking them out or something. I'm hitting them with a shotgun. Blah, blah, blah. It's like they're not surviving that. It's point blank to the face. They're not surviving it. This feels like a dungeon that should have had a dual perspective. One for the Alliance, which is basically just like what they did, and also one for the Horde, that maybe they both like get to the same endpoint, but to make it at least a little bit more believable. Again, this story makes less sense the more you think of it. They have a story they want to tell, and they don't care about if it makes sense in the context of everything else. They're just going to tell it regardless. It would be a minor thing by itself, but when compounded with everything else, it just sullies the storyline, in my opinion. Not to mention the freaking Haranir. It's like, oh my, who cares about them, dude? The Haranir feel like someone watched the Avatar movies, not the Airbender one. Like they watched Avatar like last Tuesday, became massive fans of them, and said, what if we add them to World of Warcraft and we break the lore to do so? They are not interesting. There is no Haranir character I could even tell you about. They all blend in like one amorphous mob of mediocrity for me. There's no like Haranir character that I think is a badly written character. There's just none of them that are remotely compelling. Besides like Orwina, I guess, because we knew her from the War Within, so at least she's memorable from that. But I'll give you a hint as to what the Haranir storyline is. Guys, you might not believe it, but the Haranir are isolationist. They're wary of the outside world, but maybe, just maybe, current events and a greater danger threatening all of Azeroth might spur them into action and thrust them out onto the world stage. The storyline in Midnight is largely derivative and it's generic, and while some elements are conveyed in an engaging way, it feels like a story or a collection of stories I've seen a million times before, not just in World of Warcraft, but like everywhere. It's an extremely forgettable narrative, besides like maybe Zul'aman. Zul'aman. And even then, the plot beats aren't why that zone is good. The art team is stellar. The music can be good, and then I hear the old Silver Moon theme and I get depressed about the current one. Voidstorm is pretty good, and then Lithraxian's the villain because we have to do this light blindness thing. I was willing to give them some time to adapt to having new writers and a new vision with the War Within. I was willing for that story to be a little bit messy because I was willing to give them time and really show out with Midnight. They simply didn't. I don't know how much staying power Prey is going to have, but I've done a couple of them at this point, and I kind of like them. I don't think Prey is supposed to be something you actively focus on. It's something that you do alongside doing like world quests or professions, just anything out in the open world. And I think in that role, Prey has quite a bit of potential, especially depending on how these higher difficulties of Prey pan out. Midnight has some massive crippling flaws to me, but there are some decent high points here. So here's where you come in. Have you played Midnight? And if you have, what did you really enjoy about it? Or what issues do you have with the expansion? I would love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And they released a whole animation for Arator. If you want to hear more about why I'm not a big fan of that character specifically, you're going to want to check out this video right here for more. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.